Welcome to the Love and Meaning podcast, where inner work is a lifestyle. Welcome back to the Love and Meaning podcast. I'm your host, Christelle, aka Cree, and I want to talk about spirituality today. That sounds so broad, but I want to talk about it from a real foundational perspective. And I believe that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. And my relationship with my spirituality has changed so much over the decade that I've been doing inner work. At the end of the day, everything comes back down to this foundation of spirit connection. Straight up, we're getting woo-woo. But what's so interesting is that over this past weekend, I am a licensed and registered occupational therapist. I'm also a life coach. And as an occupational therapist who's part of, an overarching college, we have to keep up our education. And so it's called continuing education. So every time I renew my registration, we have to demonstrate that we've done our continuing ed. And I was doing some continuing education and I was learning more about IFS. I was doing another IFS training, and IFS is internal family systems, and it is my most favorite treatment modality it was created by Richard Swartz for trauma treatment. He's a trauma therapist. And but it has such a far-reaching impact that it can just be a tool that anybody can use to really start to operate from what he calls self-energy. And self-energy is really what I believe your soul. It is your truest form of authenticity. And this is a scientific teaching, and it is probably the most effective after how many years that we've been attempting to treat trauma. This guy comes along and creates this framework, this modality that if you actually look at it, it is straight up spiritual. It is straight up spiritual. It involves the individual going inside of themselves into their internal landscape. So it's called internal family system, to speak to their own inner family, not outer family, not mom, dad, brothers, sisters, inner family, the parts of themselves that were created out of need to protect themselves. And the healing comes from the ultimate part of ourselves, which is our self, which is our true self, which is not really a part, which really, I believe, is the soul, healing those parts. I mean, what? And it is extremely effective. I had my first IFS practitioner. I worked with her 2 years ago, and it was a life-changing experience because it sounds so out there to me. And then immediately in the first session, I'm talking my parts. It just happened like this. And it's highly effective. And I really see a parallel. I'm not surprised. I am woo-woo. That doesn't scare me. But I know a lot of people, especially I work in a scientific world. Let's be serious. Psychiatry is an art. More than it's a science, it's an art. And if you were on the inside, you would really see that. But the outside world really thinks that science is so practically based, and that the more that we can prove something, the better that it works. And I believe that science is constantly catching up to spirituality. And so at the foundation of everything that matters, meaning, this podcast is called Love and Meaning. At the foundation of inner work If you are an intentional person, and you probably are if you're listening to this podcast, if you are a conscious person, or if you're a person who wants to be more conscious, wants to be intentional, wants to walk in their life not just as a reaction, but as a creative being that they are, you have to connect to the spirit aspect of yourself. And you can call it whatever you want. You can call it whatever you want. But that soul aspect of us, that thing that is not our human, that thing that you can't explain why you have certain guidance or certain information, that part of us that holds wisdom of almost being an ancient being, no matter what your age is. You know, we see this aspect come through children. We've all seen, I mean, on the internet and memes and reels, but we see like the wisest of children. We all have this aspect of us, and it's whether we allow it to come through, whether we allow ourselves to listen to it, whether we allow ourselves to have the space to allow it to speak, be heard, be listened to. In my collective perspective, which is my membership, we've spent the last couple months focusing on pausing. And pausing simply means getting quiet. In my collective perspective, as a group, we contemplate on a certain teaching every single month. And the first step in the contemplation process is to pause. Why is it to pause? It is so that we can access the spirit part of ourselves. This is so that we can hear the sound of the universe. We can hear the sound of source, God, guides, spirit. This is why we pause, so that our greater wisdom can come through. And I had this kind of like realization that there's a difficulty with the balance of pausing. I see some people who, are interested in like meditating all day long, but then spend very little time or true energy, or actually are mostly challenged by walking in their real present life. And then there's many of us who find it uncomfortable or difficult to pause at all, as if that is the part of us that we are most avoiding, when it is actually the greatest, wisest, most natural aspect of ourselves. So the key is not to be all or nothing. The key is to find our way to constantly be flowing through into that wisdom, that quiet wisdom, and back into our everyday life lived experience. And that can look like so many different things and in so many different ways. So, really, in this episode, I guess what I wanted to talk about was that one, this is so important, and it has to be prioritized, and it has to be legitimized. And I don't mean by scientific proof, but I just mean by the respect with which we speak about it, hold it, prioritize it, put time in our day, allow ourselves to actually feel the results of when we take the time to do that. Just because we can't explain it, giving ourselves like a fair chance, you know, by our allowing ourselves to not have to prove why something is super helpful to us, but just know that it is by how it feels on a really, really deep level. I wish that that could be more mainstream. And one of the ways that that can be made more mainstream is by not thinking that the way that we interact with spirit has to look a specific way. And I'm super guilty of this myself. So one of the things that my coach and I were working on last month was so I made a point, and I've mentioned this like a number of times. If you're in my collective perspective, I've mentioned it a number of times, where I'm like, one of my major goals this year, my major intentions is to really connect deeper with spirit. And I was asking my coach, like, how can I do that? And so brilliantly, she responded to me that there's almost a flaw in my question. It's like, I think that there is a specific way to do it. I think I had asked her even for like some sort of incantation or prayer or kind of like a mantra, something to like get me into that place. And she was like, how, how do you even know you're in that place? What does it feel like? What is it like? What is it? How does spirit communicate with you? And when I started to answer these questions, the answers were not what I expected. So, for example, sometimes I get these kind of knowings. So, in human design, my authority, meaning the way that I am designed to make decisions, is splenic. And what a splenic authority looks like is like it's just a random knowing that shows up. For the first time, I made the connection that these random knowings that have come to me my entire life, where are they coming from? Human design dictates that your body is where all of your wisdom is. But my body is the tuning fork. My body is the medium with which the information is passed through. From where? And sometimes my splitting authority is like tells me to like eat ice cream. Like, it can be anything. It can be a lot of times to like play a game, to go and lie down, to sit in the backyard and listen to the birds, to take a really long shower, to do stretches or Pilates or something where my body feels like longer, longer and like expanded. These are some of the nudges that I'll get. From who? From where? Why did I think that could not possibly be spirit? Because the truth is, every single time I listen to these nudges, something helpful for everyone in my environment, everyone exposed to me, whether that's clients, um, my following on my social media, my husband, my friends, my family, whether it's, my coworkers, whatever it is, something beneficial for everyone comes as a result. I made a post a few weeks back about myself becoming very emotional on public transportation. I was on the bus and something kind of triggered a lot of sadness in me. And I was really, really emotional and I just started to cry. And I have done a lot of work with myself where I don't feel any shame for my emotions anymore. That is something that I grew up in an environment, and not to say that this was, an abusive environment, but just by like be tough, be a survivor, be like, be strong, where I gained the understanding and belief that me having emotions, me crying was a sign of weakness. So I've come a very long way with that. Even still, my preference would not be to cry on the bus, but it happened, the tears came, and I allowed it. And something told me, take a picture of myself crying on the bus. And I did. And as soon as I took the picture and I looked at the picture, all of this stuff flooded through that I needed to write. And I just started writing. And then I posted that as a post on social media. The raw picture of me and my emotions and what came through me at the time. And for the sake of anonymity, what I will say is some dear people in my life reached out to me as a result of this post and shared some really deep, challenging things that they had been going through, that they felt safe enough to share with me and be witnessed in because of that post. It's social media, it's a picture, it's words. Someone might zoom out and look at that and be like, okay, that was great, I don't know, marketing for yourself. It was spirit connection that I just allowed to pass through and allowed to have an impact and allowed to make a change in someone's life. Who gets to define these things? I think it's up to us. And what I've come to realize in my journey is that the spirit connection was always there and it's everywhere. And it's a matter of me opening myself up to everywhere that it is already. It's not something that I need to add. And this is something like exactly what my mentor said. It's not something that you need to add. I kept thinking it's like something I'm going to get, but it's actually already there. So what do you need to take away that's in the way? I want to kind of encourage, as I'm setting myself free of this, for all of us to set ourselves free in this way and to ask ourselves the same question. Where where has it been covered up? And instead of adding more necessarily, but what can we take away or what can we remove that's getting in the way? What can we reframe that's getting in the way? So one of the really innocuous ways that this was showing up very recently is my life has changed quite a bit. The way that my life flows has changed quite a bit. From being single to being married is a huge change. From not having a business to having a business is a huge change. I literally moved where I lived. The things I do with my time has changed. And I had a very strict morning routine that I would do. And it was strict. I created it. Like I created that morning routine for myself because it felt amazing. And that was definitely spirit connection. Spirit, through my spirit connection, I created a magical routine for myself that worked like a charm. Like I so often, I know what it feels like to be in alignment and not in alignment. And this was like the perfect setup to being in alignment. And it was highly structured and it really worked for myself. I would give myself 3 hours every single morning before I walked out into the day that were mine. They were my magical 3 hours. And it started at 4:30 a.m. And I would leave my house by 7:30 a.m. glowing and on cloud nine. I would wake up at 4:30. I would brush my teeth. I would wash my face. I would drink a glass of water. I would meditate. I would journal. I would do my workout. I would do my stretches. I would do my affirmations. I would do some sort of like physical thing with myself, like fascia blasting, or dry brushing. Like I fully took care of my human and my spirit in those 3 hours, and I picked the routine for myself. And that worked for me for like 6 years straight. And then my life started to change in these pretty drastic ways. A relationship is a pretty big introduction. And then living with that person, that's a complete change of life, right? And then I was married. And then I started a business. I got a dog. Like things changed. And for the longest time, I kept feeling like I was failing or I was disconnected from spirit because I could no longer do my routine. It felt like my connection to spirit had been interrupted by my life. Think about that. My connection to spirit was interrupted by my life. How is that even possible? Or did I, with the knowing that my connection to spirit can't be broken, did I have to find a new way to listen, to hear, to communicate, release things that were in the way? What was actually in the way now was the routine. The strong desire to be back in the routine was not coming from the place where the routine was created. The routine was created out of spirit connection. And then I was trying to maintain it out of obligation. I was trying to maintain it out of checking the box. But that's not why I created the routine to begin with. And in this new place, in this new alignment, in many ways, that routine created the version of me that I am today. I don't really even need it. I have such a wider open channel to source. But it took me really sitting and being honest with myself and releasing the routine and letting myself know it's not because I failed. It's not because I'm neglecting myself now. It's not because I don't have time for anything anymore. It's because I have new priorities. I have new needs. And I'm changing what works for me. The point is that it works for me. And so my new morning routine is waking up in the morning and having a conversation with my inner child and allowing her to choose what we want to do today. Instead of 3 hours, I now have 90 minutes before I'm leaving my home in the morning. And what do I want to do with those 90 minutes? I let my inner child decide. But it's meaningful, it's authentic, it is source guided and connected. It's not what should I do? It's truly asking, tapping in to what feels aligned. What is the connection right now? And doing that. And it looks so different every day. It can be anything. For a while during the summertime, it was waking up in the morning and reading a couple chapters of the fantasy series that I was obsessed with. That's what she wanted to do, my inner child. And I felt floaty, like in my connection. Like I felt so tapped in and so present, so aligned. Sometimes it's moving my body. Sometimes it's being able to walk and watch the sunrise. Sometimes it's just staying lying in bed. Sometimes it's breathing. Sometimes it's listening to a certain, hertz on Spotify. Like I love those different hertz playlists. Sometimes it's a sound and I feel my body like kind of like buzz and attune to things. Sometimes it's sitting on my grounding mat. I often I either sleep on my grounding mat or I ground in the evening and then I'll like soak my feet with magnesium or something, but like I'll ground before that. But sometimes I want more. And so it's either I can go outside and literally put my bare feet in the grass or I can use the grounding mat. But the point is that it is decided through the current connection, through my authentic alignment in the moment. So what was getting in the way was my own routine. Who would think that that could be the problem? You know what I mean? So our spirituality, our tapping into spirit, which is basically detaching from the human, can come through the most human of things. It's a self-discovery, it's a dance, it's so much more playful than we allow it to be. It's a conversation with yourself, if I want to use IFS terms. It's self-guided. I also highly encourage people, oh my gosh, um, Gabby Bernstein just came out with a new book and it's called Self-Help. And guess what? The self she's referring to in self-help is the self of IFS. So it is a book about basically utilizing IFS as an everyday practice for anyone. Not just for therapists, not for whether you have big T trauma, it's just for anyone. You know how that's Gabby's thing, is that she'll take something complex and she'll give it to you in the most simple, accessible ways. I highly recommend checking out that book. It's amazing. Like she nailed it. She really, really, really nailed it. Allowing ourselves to make it up as we go along, not over define it, and not make yourself wrong no matter what. So if it is really structured, because I had a very structured routine for 6 years, it worked for me. That's fine, but you're gonna know by how it feels. You're gonna know, you're just gonna know. You know what I mean? Like I knew I wanted to tap in more, but what I didn't know was the ways that I was getting in my own way. So allow your intuition to guide you. Allow yourself to guide you. And get rid of the rules, get rid of, the preconceived notions. We're not checking boxes here. We're tapping in. If you want a community to do this with, if you want a space where you can do this alongside other powerful, beautiful, spiritually connected people, please do join my Collective Perspective membership. This is what we're doing there. We're really awakening our intuitions and we're really allowing our intuitive guidance to come through at the forefront. But it's an everyday practice. It's an all the time practice. So I find it very, very powerful to have a community, even for me. Like I created this community and it's for me, really. You know what I mean? Having a space to go to really re-ground ourselves in what matters and what's meaningful and where the love is so incredibly powerful. So please do, I invite you to come into the collective perspective if you want a beautiful space and community to do this with. But just allow more of an intuitive practice with spirituality. Let's not be afraid of the woo-woo stuff. Call it whatever you like. Science is catching up. It's catching up. So you want to call it scientific, call it scientific. Do whatever you have to do, but this is the top layer. This is the first step. I say top layer, but it's the foundation actually. Like this is the base layer. This is the foundation. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like setting the foundation and moving to the top of the pyramid. Like this is, we gotta have that. We gotta allow ourselves to tap in however we're meant to tap in. Play with it, have fun with it. Don't take it too seriously. Forgive yourself when you do take it too seriously. Talk about it, read about it. Just allow self to really, really guide you. I love you. Let me know what you think about all of this, and I'll see you in the next one.